You're not gonna believe this, the new McCree is even better than I thought. Reason being, recovery time buffs two different things. Not only is his rated fire, burst potential, damage thresholds, everything that I talked about yesterday getting buffed, but one that I think is even more significant is that the recoil of McCree is getting significantly nerfed. You can see this if you compare two screenshots of where the crosshair kicks to, almost in the same exact position. Notice how the screenshot on the left is well above the training bot's head, and the PTR one only peaks at like, I don't know, it almost looks half. I was trying this out in the training range and I was wondering why, wow, can I just aim McCree all of a sudden? Yeah, I actually can. This buff is incredible because it's doing two things at once, giving McCree more damage and also making him easier or more accurate, which definitely affects all levels of play, but the reliability of how you can aim and the speed at which you can do it is incredible. I mean, back in the Tracer meta when they added Brigida, if they buffed McCree like this, McCree would have no problems dealing with Tracer. In fact, I'd go as far to say that it's going to feel a lot easier to deal with Tracer as McCree with the amount of control and speed that the new Peacekeeper has. Because remember, characters' animations move incredibly fast in Overwatch, so having more control of your crosshair and a faster follow-up shot means zippy mobility targets are now going to be deathly afraid of McCree, in my opinion. And he's already got stun and fan the hammer. This buff is so crazy. It's an example of Blizzard power creeping their power creep. Remember last year when we thought the new Hanzo was just outrageous? Well, realistically, this new McCree Peacekeeper compared up to Hanzo's best cooldown is actually quite similar. Now, yes, of course, McCree has fall off, but Hanzo doesn't have recoil, however, has travel distance on his shots. With McCree having very little recoil now and rapid fire shots, you're going to be as deathly afraid of McCree spamming shots just with his primary fire alone on you as you are against the Hanzo. They're both just melt machines now. And I think a fairly good comparison to the type of recoil we're working with here is Ana, because her hip fire does have a slight recoil to it, but I think it's mostly negligible. And I know a lot of players, I mean, even Liam used to tell me this as well. I know not everybody found the old McCree recoil to throw off their aim, but for me, it most definitely did because of how reliant I am to use the crosshair to track to my next shot. Well, with it following up so much quicker and the recoil being much less, it takes far less finesse to use McCree, and it kind of reminds me, again, back to Hanzo, where originally his bow felt like it took a mastery level college curriculum to understand the nuances of how to fire the old, really slow arrows from Hanzo. It felt like only Raksu and 5 other players really mastered it, whereas now the modern day Hanzo, well, he's quite reliable, just like any other DPS. McCree now is getting buffed into this new era of Overwatch power creep where, because he doesn't have mobility, they're making him an absolute death machine. In order to compete with the insane power creep comps, you gotta have heroes that are just on the broken side. I mean, this is scarier than the original Junkrat 140 damage. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I thought that was just way too far, but the thing is, at least with Junkrat, you have some randomness to limit how reliable that damage can be. Now, you might say, well, this is good because players that can aim are just going to dominate with McCree. And also on the other end, players that can't aim aren't going to be able to make use of this McCree buff anyway. But let me tell you this, tank players are not going to be excited when McCree's primary fire is more lethal than Fan the Hammer. I know I could speak for myself and many other tank players that when Fan the Hammer got buffed recently, it took a whole lot of learning to make sure to respect that thing because you can stun, Fan the Hammer, roll, fan again. I mean, it just deletes an entire HP pool, right? Well, with how quick and easy the follow-up shots are on a tank's head right now, Ryan's gonna be deathly afraid to toss in a Fire Strike, because with very little recoil, McCree's just gonna go dink dink. Oh, and by the way, I still have roll, Fan the Hammer with a stun left. That was why those abilities were so insane, I thought, because McCree's primary fire was just so difficult to use. Like, it was lethal, but it was so challenging to control that they sort of just gave him a free kill on cooldown. Now, with the combination of both being insane, he's just one of the best characters in the game. So, we mostly talked about McCree, but I also wanted to give my entire review of the patch and the different movements that are going on with comps going up or down. A lot of people were looking to the Orisa and Baptiste buffs to be a significant buff to Bunker. I actually think you can and write those away. Sure, Orisa gets to shoot a little more, so her damage output goes up slightly in this small window, but it's not going to change how Bunker gets played. Same thing with Baptiste. Both of these buffs I don't think help Bunker as much as it helps Baptiste with other comps, especially Rein. What I mean is, if you're set up with a Bunker, the fights don't last that long, because you should have a DPS character who's all in, pretty much on the immortality field to save it, like a Bastion, not so much his healing. That sort of efficiency gain matters way more in Baptiste Goats, for example, where team comps last forever and you're just healing your Zarya forever and ever and ever. So yes, the extra amount of efficiency with more ammo affects that, but I don't think it does very much for Bunker. I mean, yes, it does buff it slightly, but the playstyle didn't really make use of his full capacity necessarily anyway, in my opinion, so it's not as scary for Bunker as you might think. His ult lasting longer is great, but again, it's sort of the same thing where I felt the enemy team either dodges the amplification matrix entirely, being able to wait out its duration, or it already won you the team fight. It always felt one or the other. So sure, it lasting longer can help press that advantage for a few extra seconds in a really close fight, but I don't think that happens very often. More likely, either the enemy dodges it entirely because they know if they stand there, they just die. Like, you instantly lose if you're in view of the amp matrix. So definitely makes it better, but I don't know if it's changing its playstyle to a severe degree. So to that end, I don't think Bunker is actually getting buffed much at all. And if anything, it's getting nerfed, because one of the biggest counters to Bunker is characters like Pharmacy, getting angles on it, pressuring the shield, knocking it off with Conka Blast, and just range damage in general. And the other character that you all know got a significant nerf is D.Va. Now, the interesting thing about this D.Va nerf is that I would describe it like this. Because you have less range, the times that you're going to really notice not having the 15 meters of defense matrix now being shortened to 10 is when you're playing defensively and the enemy's attacking you from different angles and you have to get from A to B instantly to deny a key ultimate, like a barrage being set up by Pharah, especially up against multi-DPS, right? Soldier sights out in the distance, Tracer getting ready to stick a pulse bomb on your backline. D.Va's coverage of the battlefield as it started to split was really long in those cases because DM was just, I mean, like half a map long, right? 15 meters is forever. So now when the team fights start to get split apart like that, it's much harder for D.Va to be able to swoop in and make that play. So I think that hurts Goat's comp, but also Bunker, where D.Va's playing that defensive playstyle, trying to play whack-a-mole with the DPS threats as they swarm around you. No matter what, I'm almost positive it nerfs defensive D.Va play more so than the next thing I'm going to explain, which is offensive D.Va play, where if you are the dive comp diving in onto a Bastion, well, really, your D.Va and Winston should be what's called stacked, which is to say that they're essentially holding hands, right, in lockstep with their movement so that D.Va is covering Winston. And yes, less range will mean that's a little bit harder to do, but as long as you're already in line with your Winston, you'll still be able to jump onto the Bunker and have 2 full seconds where the Bastion can't deal damage to you. You get that space, you get out. Now you've made space, you can get angles to surround it. I still think D.Va as an engagement tool is still going to be good. An interesting thing is that's actually the first playstyle D.Va used to have way back in like year 1. Where her defense matrix was an all-in ability that you flicked on and stayed on for quite a long time. It wasn't reactive at all or flexible like it later got buffed to be. And it's interesting to see how they're sort of just like nerfing her back into that state more or less so that she's mostly that playstyle anyway. I think you will notice the lack of reach of D.Va when like diving an Ana, for example, where perhaps your range isn't long enough to be able to eat the nade. But again, since you dictate where the impact comes in, where the dive lands, you're much more in control of using the amount of range you have. Whereas when the enemy's attacking you, you have to respond to their positioning rather than setting it up yourself. So, who actually is winning in this case on this new patch? Well, obviously McCree, right? Any comp where he can survive in, he's just gonna melt face. I see no reason that McCree Goats wouldn't be really strong, and nobody calls it that actually. Usually they would call it Super McCree, but it would be Brig played as a DPS, and it's still Goat's comp with the 3 supports, but it's more of a double stun setup, and traditionally that got destroyed by normal 3-3, so I don't think it'll be the top meta comp even with McCree being super powered, but it most definitely will keep a lot of shenanigans in check. And in fact, we might see less multi-DPS because you can so easily play Protect the President and have McCree deal all your damage for you, which is going to be interesting how this lands because I think multi-DPS looks a lot better up against a bunker with the new weakened D.Va, but as soon as you start to play Protect the McCree, well, he's just the most insane duelist ever. So the idea that you're going to be able to split off with these characters that just never die, like Tracer, Sombra, Soldier, and have a triangulated attack surrounding the enemy, as soon as the enemy picks McCree, well, each one of those attack angles I think is just going to get destroyed. It doesn't matter how good your Tracer or Sombra is, especially at the highest levels of play, the McCree is now, with no recoil, going to destroy those flanks, emboldening a deathball style of play even more so. But we should have sort of expected this because the power creep of rock, paper, scissors comps has just gotten more and more lethal, and this is just one more step in that direction, where the best deathball comp used to be quite weak to multi-DPS as long as the map was big enough, but now I don't even think that's the case because you just swap in a McCree and he's going to make you so afraid to try to flank and do anything off on your own by yourself that I don't even think you're going to be able to do it. It's too much of a risk. You just pick you off instantly. Dink, dink, like it's nothing. So, yeah. And the thing that counters the McCree is full-on Goats comp, because as long as you put barriers in his way, then you're going to be able to overwhelm and sustain and do all that. And I don't think that principle changes even with him being better. Like, yeah, he'll be able to melt the tanks a bit better, but again, all you got to do is set up that kind of dive where you set up a rushdown where your McCree or Brig close the distance on him to swing with the sustain of Zarya bubbles and D.Va to eat up McCree's shots, meaning that he doesn't do anything. And that's not going to be ideal because McCree's definitely going to get played in ranked. He's going to destroy ranked. But I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him as much in stage 3 as you'd expect, due to the fact that I still think Goats is pretty strong up against the McCree comp. Well, guys, that's everything for today's wild trip into the Overwatch power creeped meta. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for your Overwatch. See you guys next time.